That Friday evening, a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years settled over the house. It wasn't just the absence of noise. It was a deep, almost palpable stillness that brought with it a rare and welcome sense of calm. The week had been a relentless treadmill of deadlines and responsibilities, leaving me utterly drained. All I wanted was to sink into my bed and let the silence of the night wash over me. As I finally lay down, pulling the soft comforter around me, I thought nothing could possibly break this peaceful hush. It had been 8 years since my divorce, 8 years of navigating life as a single mother. My ex-husband, Mark, and I didn't have some dramatic falling out. We simply grew apart, our paths diverging in ways we couldn't have predicted. Raising our son, Daniel, on my own has been the most challenging and yet the most rewarding experience of my life. He means absolutely everything to me. His quick wit always manages to make me laugh. His kindness shines through in everything he does, and his intelligence constantly impresses me. But there were times, especially when he was younger, that the weight of being both his mother and father felt almost unbearable. That night, however, I was too tired for any heavy thoughts. I barely had the energy to slip on my pajamas before collapsing into bed. The house was quiet. Daniel, who was just shy of turning 20, had been in his room for hours, lost in the world of video games after finishing his homework. Finally, I had some precious time alone in my own space. The moonlight, a soft silvery glow, streamed through the thin, curved curtains, casting gentle shadows that danced on the walls. I cuddled deeper under the blanket, enjoying the comforting warmth and letting my mind drift. Life had been relatively peaceful lately, a welcome change after a particularly rough year. Daniel and I had been through a lot since Mark left, but somehow we had managed to build a solid, loving life together. Even though Daniel was practically a grown man, we were still incredibly close. He had always been a caring and considerate son, perhaps even more so after the divorce. Sometimes, though, I worried that he carried too much responsibility on his young shoulders. A small smile touched my lips as I thought of him. He truly was a good kid, and I felt incredibly fortunate to have him in my life. But tonight, exhaustion had claimed me. My limbs felt heavy, my eyelids felt like lead, and sleep was just moments away when I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. I woke slightly, disoriented, thinking it was part of a dream. But then the knock came again, a little more insistent this time, and I was fully awake. "Mom?" It was Daniel's voice, soft but clear enough to rouse me from my sleepiness. I blinked, trying to focus on the door. In the dim light filtering from the hallway, I could just make out his silhouette. I sat up in bed, pushing the sleep from my eyes. "Daniel, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice still thick with sleep. He hesitated for a moment before slowly entering the room, quietly closing the door behind him. He stood by my bedside, looking down, a sense of uncertainty radiating from him. I couldn't sleep," he murmured, still avoiding eye contact. A sudden surge of worry shot through me. Since the divorce, Daniel had occasionally had trouble sleeping, especially in the beginning, but he rarely talked about it. I knew his father's departure had hurt him more than he ever let on, and tonight I could see a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "Come here," I said softly, patting the empty space beside me on the bed. "You can stay with me tonight if you want." He hesitated for another moment, as if weighing the offer, but then slowly lay down beside me, turning to face me on his side. In the soft moonlight, I could see how truly tired he looked. There was an unusual vulnerability about him tonight that tugged at my heart. "Do you want to talk about it?" I asked gently, reaching out to lightly touch his arm. Daniel shook his head, his dark hair falling across his forehead. "No, I just wanted to be close to you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. A wave of warmth washed over me. It had been a while since Daniel had sought this kind of closeness, a simple need for comfort that reminded me of when he was a little boy. I gently brushed his hair away from his forehead, a tender smile gracing my lips. "That's okay," I whispered back, resting my hand on his shoulder. "You can stay as long as you need." He offered a small, tired smile in return, but I could still sense that something was bothering him, a deeper unease beneath the surface. Instead of pressing him to talk, I lay back down, pulling the blanket over us both, allowing the quiet and my presence to hopefully offer some comfort. We lay there for a while, enjoying the stillness of the night, the only sound, the gentle rhythm of our breathing. Daniel's breathing soon slowed, and I thought he had finally drifted off to sleep. But then he spoke again, his voice so soft I almost didn't hear him. "Mom, do you ever miss him?" His question hung in the air, a fragile thing that caught me completely off guard. I knew instantly he was talking about Mark, his father. It was a question I had consciously avoided for years, a topic I hadn't known how to navigate without causing either of us more pain. "I do, sometimes," I admitted quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. The truth of it surprised even me. There were moments, fleeting but real, when I missed the companionship, the shared history. But then the memories of the growing distance, the unspoken resentments, would flood back, reminding me why we had ultimately chosen different paths. "But things weren't good between us, Daniel. You know that." He nodded in the darkness, a small, almost imperceptible movement. But I could sense he wanted more, a deeper explanation, perhaps a validation of his own feelings. "Do you ever think things could have been different?" he asked, his voice laced with a hint of longing, a child's wish for a different past. I sighed, the weight of past what-ifs settling in my chest. "Maybe," I said softly, my gaze drifting towards the ceiling, where the moonlight painted faint patterns. "But we can't change what happened, honey. We have to look forward, to focus on the life we have now, the life we've built together." Daniel looked down, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the soft blanket that covered us. "I guess I just wonder if I could have done something different," he murmured, his voice barely audible, filled with a vulnerability that pierced my heart. "Like, if I had been better." The self-blame in his tone was like a physical ache in my own chest. I sat up and turned to face him more fully, my voice firm but gentle. "Daniel, no, absolutely not. This wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." I reached out and gently cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my gaze in the dim light. He looked away, his voice a mere whisper, filled with a sadness that belied his age. "Sometimes it feels like if I had been better, maybe Dad wouldn't have left." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I pulled him into a tight embrace, holding him close. He resisted for a fleeting moment, a stiffness in his young body, but then he hugged me back, burying his face in my shoulder. I could feel the weight of his unspoken pain, the years of carrying this unwarranted guilt. "Daniel, listen to me," I said, my voice shaking slightly with emotion. "Your dad made his own choices. It had absolutely nothing to do with you. It was his decision, and it was never ever your responsibility. You have always been more than enough for me," I whispered, my voice thick with love and reassurance. "You are everything to me." He nodded against my shoulder, and I could feel the dampness of tears seeping through my pajama top. But even as he clung to me, I could still sense the lingering tension in his body, the deep-seated weight of years of silent pain and guilt. We held each other closely, the silence between us offering a strange kind of comfort, a shared space of unspoken understanding. Gradually, Daniel's body relaxed against mine, the tight knot of tension in his shoulders easing. His breathing became slow and even, and I knew he had finally drifted back to sleep, his face nestled against my neck. But as he rested peacefully beside me, my own mind was wide awake, a whirlwind of thoughts and memories swirling in the darkness. We had both endured so much over the years, navigated challenges I never thought I could face alone. And yet, in the quiet comfort of our shared embrace, something unexpected stirred within me. It wasn't just the familiar warmth of a mother's love for her child. It was something else, something I couldn't quite define, a warmth that seemed to spread through my entire being, a connection that felt deeper, more intimate than the usual bond between a mother and her son. I tried to ignore the sensation, to chalk it up to the emotional intensity of the moment, focusing on the rhythmic sound of Daniel's breathing beside me. But the feeling remained, a persistent whisper in the quiet of the night, a subtle shift in the familiar landscape of our relationship. Morning arrived too quickly, as it always does when sleep is fitful. The soft light of dawn gently illuminated the room, painting the walls in hues of pale gold and rose. Daniel slept soundly beside me, his face peaceful and relaxed, the worries of the previous night seemingly forgotten in the embrace of sleep. I watched him for a moment, my heart swelling with the familiar love and pride of a mother. But beneath that familiar affection, that unfamiliar feeling from the night before lingered, a quiet undercurrent present in the stillness of the morning. Careful not to disturb him, I slipped out of bed and went downstairs to make breakfast. The familiar routine of grinding coffee beans and the sizzle of bacon on the pan usually brought a sense of grounding, but this morning my thoughts kept returning to our late-night conversation, to the raw vulnerability in Daniel's voice, and to the unexpected warmth of our embrace. Daniel had always been a sensitive child, but I hadn't fully grasped the depth of his internal struggles, the way he had internalized his father's absence, the heavy weight of guilt he had carried in silence for so long. It weighed heavily on my own heart, a burden I wished I could somehow lift from him. But it wasn't just his words that lingered in my mind. It was also the memory of the way he had looked at me, the raw vulnerability in his eyes, and the almost imperceptible longing for something more than just a mother's comfort. And if I was truly honest with myself, I had felt it too, that unexpected warmth that had spread through me when I held him, a comfort that seemed to transcend mere maternal instinct. I quickly pushed the thought aside, a flicker of unease accompanying it. He was my son after all. But the feeling didn't entirely dissipate. It remained, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my usual emotions. Daniel eventually came downstairs, the sleep still clinging to his tousled hair, a reminder of the boy he still was. Yet there was a new steadiness in his gaze, a hint of the man he was becoming. I greeted him with a warm smile, trying to appear as normal as possible, masking the complex mix of emotions that still lingered from our late-night talk. "Morning, sleepyhead," I said cheerfully, placing a plate of golden pancakes in front of him. "Morning," he mumbled, settling into his chair and eagerly digging into his breakfast. We ate in comfortable silence, the morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the familiar scene. Occasionally I felt his eyes on me, a lingering gaze that held a question I wasn't quite ready to answer. I focused on my coffee, trying to project an air of normalcy. Finally, Daniel broke the silence, his voice filled with a quiet gratitude. "Thanks for last night, Mom. I really needed that." His unexpected vulnerability caught me off guard once again. "You never have to thank me, Daniel," I reassured him, my voice soft but sincere. "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." He nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on me, an unspoken question still lingering in his eyes, reflecting the unspoken emotions I had been grappling with since the night before. There was a new depth in his eyes, an intensity that went beyond the familiar comfort of our mother-son bond. The day unfolded quietly. Daniel retreated to his room, immersed in his studies and the virtual world of video games, while I busied myself with household chores. Yet despite the physical distance, the atmosphere between us had subtly shifted. It was an intangible change, a quiet tension, an unspoken acknowledgement of the deeper connection that had emerged in the stillness of the night. As the day turned into evening, my thoughts kept returning to Daniel, to his transformation from a boy grappling with his father's absence to a young man standing on the cusp of adulthood. I thought about the closeness we had shared, the unexpected intimacy that had blossomed in the darkness. The more I pondered it, the more I realized that my feelings for him had perhaps evolved in ways I hadn't fully acknowledged, maybe even transcending the traditional boundaries of maternal love. That evening, after a simple dinner, we settled on the couch to watch a movie. The living room was dimly lit, the flickering images on the screen casting dancing shadows across the walls. We sat mostly in comfortable silence, content to simply be in each other's presence. But as the movie progressed, I became acutely aware of Daniel's proximity. The way his arm lightly brushed against mine with every small movement sent a subtle shiver through me. My heartbeat quickened, and I tried to focus on the film, but the quiet tension between us was palpable, a silent symphony of unspoken emotions. Midway through the film, during a particularly poignant scene, Daniel subtly shifted closer. His arm now rested firmly against mine, and this time he didn't move away. The warmth of his skin against mine sent a more pronounced ripple of awareness through me. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye, and our eyes met in the dim light. His gaze held a newfound intensity, a mirror reflecting the emotions I had been trying to suppress all day. Without thinking, acting on an impulse I didn't fully understand, I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwined, a natural fit, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken feelings that hung in the air. He didn't resist. Instead, he squeezed my hand gently, his thumb tracing slow, deliberate circles on my skin. That simple touch sent a flutter through my chest, a sensation both familiar and thrillingly new. We sat like that for a while, hands clasped in the dim light, a silent testament to the shifting dynamics of our relationship. It felt like a turning point, a moment of unspoken understanding that transcended the usual boundaries of our familial roles. I didn't know what the future held, but in that moment I knew that things were irrevocably changing. Daniel was no longer just my son. He was something more, someone I cared for in a way that defied simple explanation. The movie ended, the credits rolling unnoticed on the screen. We remained on the couch, our hands still clasped. I found myself leaning my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. It was a small gesture, yet it felt profoundly intimate, a quiet recognition of the connection that was blossoming between us. "Mom," Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible above the soft hum of the television. "Yeah?" I replied softly, my own voice a little shaky. "I'm really glad you're here," he said, his words simple yet profound, echoing the sentiment in my own heart. I was glad he was there too, grateful for this unexpected closeness, this newfound intimacy that felt both exhilarating and a little frightening. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly alive, a spark ignited in a place I thought had long gone dormant. There was no confusion in that moment, no guilt, just the pure, undeniable truth of a connection that had deepened and transformed in ways I never could have imagined. As I lay there in the darkness, wrapped in the warmth of my son's presence, a profound realization washed over me. The delicate balance of our relationship had shifted, teetering on the edge of something new and uncharted. A flicker of apprehension ran through me, a whisper of uncertainty about what this change might mean for us. Yet alongside that fear, there was an undeniable sense of anticipation, a quiet recognition that this was just the beginning of a journey into the unknown. Morning came softly, the gentle sunlight filtering through the curtains, rousing me from sleep. Beside me, Daniel slept peacefully, his face calm and relaxed, the worries of the previous night seemingly forgotten. I watched him for a moment, my heart swelling with the familiar love of a mother, but beneath that, something else stirred. The same unfamiliar emotion that had lingered at the edges of my awareness the night before, something that both intrigued and unsettled me. I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb him, and went downstairs to start breakfast. As I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease, my thoughts drifted back to our late-night conversation, to the shift in his demeanor, the way he had sought comfort in my arms, the yearning for a closeness that went beyond the usual bond of mother and son. And if I was honest with myself, I had felt it too, a warmth that spread through me when I held him, a comfort that felt deeper than mere maternal instinct. I pushed the thought aside, reminding myself that he was just a boy, my son, but the feeling lingered, a quiet whisper that refused to be ignored. Daniel eventually woke up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, his hair tousled, a picture of youthful innocence. Yet there was a new maturity in his gaze, a hint of the man he was becoming. I greeted him with a warm smile, trying to mask the lingering emotions from the night before. "Morning, sleepyhead," I said cheerfully, placing a plate of golden pancakes in front of him. "Morning," he mumbled, settling into his chair and eagerly digging into his breakfast. We ate in comfortable silence, the morning sunlight filling the kitchen with a warm glow. I could feel his eyes on me occasionally, but I stayed quiet, not ready to delve into the complexities of what had happened the night before. He seemed more at ease, more like his usual self, and I didn't want to disrupt the fragile peace we had found. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice filled with a quiet gratitude. "Thanks for last night, Mom. I really needed that." His vulnerability caught me off guard once more. "You never have to thank me, Daniel," I reassured him, my voice soft but sincere. "I'll always be there for you, no matter what." He nodded, but his gaze lingered, a silent question in his eyes, reflecting the unspoken emotions I had been grappling with. His eyes held a depth, an intensity that went beyond the familiar comfort of our mother-son bond. The day passed uneventfully. Daniel retreated to his room, immersed in homework and video games, while I busied myself with household chores. Yet the atmosphere between us had subtly shifted. It was an intangible change, a quiet tension, an unspoken acknowledgement of the deeper connection that had emerged. As the day turned into evening, my thoughts returned to Daniel, to his transformation from boy to young man, to the closeness we had shared the night before. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my feelings for him had evolved, perhaps transcending the boundaries of maternal love. That evening, after dinner, we settled on the couch to watch a movie. The living room was dimly lit, the flickering images on the screen casting dancing shadows across the walls. We were mostly silent, content in each other's presence. But as the movie progressed, I became acutely aware of his proximity, the way his arm brushed against mine with every small movement. My heartbeat quickened, and I tried to focus on the film, but the tension between us was palpable, a silent symphony of unspoken emotions. Midway through the movie, Daniel shifted closer, his arm pressing against mine, and this time he didn't move away. The warmth of his skin against mine sent a shiver of awareness through me. I glanced at him, and our eyes met. His gaze was filled with a newfound intensity, a reflection of the emotions I had been trying to suppress all day. Without thinking, I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. He didn't resist. Instead, he squeezed my hand gently, his thumb tracing slow circles on my skin. That simple gesture sent a flutter through my heart, a sensation both familiar and thrillingly new. We sat like that for a while, hands clasped in the dim light, a silent testament to the shifting dynamics of our relationship. It was a turning point, a moment of unspoken understanding that transcended the boundaries of our familial roles. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that things were changing. Daniel was no longer just my son. He was something more, someone I cared for in a way that defied definition. The movie ended, but we remained on the couch, the credits rolling unnoticed. I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. It was a small gesture, yet it felt profoundly intimate, a silent acknowledgement of the connection that was blossoming between us. "Mom?" Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible. "Yeah?" I replied, my own voice a little breathless. "I'm really glad you're here," he said, his words simple yet profound, echoing the sentiment in my own heart. I was glad he was here too, grateful for this unexpected closeness, this newfound intimacy that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly alive. There was no confusion, no guilt, just the pure, undeniable truth of our love. It was a love born from years of shared experiences, of trust and understanding that ran deeper than blood. It was a love that felt as natural as breathing, as inevitable as the sunrise. We lay there in the aftermath of our shared quiet moment, the silence punctuated only by the soft rhythm of our breaths, the future stretching before us, uncertain but somehow promising.